fclose closes a file. If there was any buffered output waiting to go to the device, the flush will be done for you and just before the fclose. And the difference is any unread buffered input will be thrown away. So if you have read some strings in and you haven't done anything with them and you close that input, that is lost. That data has been lost because the buffer's thrown away. And any automatic buffered memory that was set up by the functions we'll see at the last couple of functions here, that will be deleted as well. So fclose does a lot of cleanup for you. Here's how you remove a file. Simple. Remove, pass it the file name. That's that. It'll return a positive number if there's a problem, or 0 if it's okay, if the remove worked properly. Rename will rename the file that you put in. You pass in the old file name and the new file name. Make sure it's closed, and it'll do the rename for you. Temp file will create a temporary file, and then that file will be removed when the program closes up, or if you do an fclose on it, on this temporary file pointer. You don't really care about the name of the file or anything like that. It's just a temp file that will be created on the drive, on the file system for you, and you can use it as a scratch surface, a scratch pad, whatever you want to call it, and then you close it when you're done. It's a TMP file. TMP name creates a temporary file name. Notice the E is missing off the end. That's on purpose. It does not create the file. The file name, though, is guaranteed not to exist should you choose to create it, should you do an fopen on that particular file name. You pass temp name a string pointer to a buffer that is at least long enough to hold the string name, and there is another constant in there which is called TMP underscore max. So temp name has to point to a buffer of temp max size to be able to carry the file name. Now, if you don't pass the pointer to it, it will return a pointer back here of a buffer containing that name. Here's our buffering mode. We can set the buffer with set vbuff. Now you have to call this right after you open the file, but before you do anything with it. You can't call this after you've written or read the file because the buffering has already been built for you at that point. There's 3 different modes, and that mode will be right here, and it will be underscore IOFBF, which is full buffering, IOLBF, which is line buffering. You'll read one line of text at a time, and IONBF is no buffering. There will not be any buffers created for the file. If buffer is null in here, if this is a null pointer, then a new buffer will be created of this size, however large this is. If you pass it a pointer to your file buffer, that's where the file buffer will be located. That if you don't give it a pointer, say it's null, it will create a new one for you and pass that back as a return for your size. SetBuff does the same basic operation as set vbuff. It sets the buffering mode, but it's usually used when you want to turn buffering off because these modes are still possible here, but if the buffer is null, buffering will be turned off. So typically in setBuff, you hand it the file pointer from the fopen and you hand it buffer, and if you do not specify, well, you're not specifying it, so full buffering is what's set. That's the default, is what I'm trying to tell you here. The mode will be on setBuff IOFBF, full buffering. And typically, though, that's why it's kind of odd for me to even say that for you, that full buffering is done here. Typically, the only reason you use setBuff is to turn off buffering, and that would be the only reason you would want to do that is maybe you're reading from the keyboard and you want to get every character one boom 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 one after the other, and you don't want them buffered and laying in memory someplace waiting for you to read them out. You want to have tight interaction with whatever you have opened as a file, whether it's keyboard, screen, error output, printer, whatever device you've gotten a hold of. You don't want any buffering at all. Okay, so that's the file operations of the standard library, and we're going to wrap this up here, and we're going to go on and take a look at some character class tests, which should be pretty interesting. At least to me it is. See you then.